seems to be reducing the size of the electorate to the Republicans' advantage.
Well, North Carolina passed, as you noted, Chris, the most suppressive voting law last year that the country saw. It may be the most suppressive voting law that we've seen in any state in decades. And in our view, this is a case, an issue that needs to be resolved in advance of the midterm elections in November. North Carolina doesn't see it that way. They want to put this case off until 2015. But if they really believed in election integrity, which is what they say they believe in, then they join us in our sense of urgency, because if a court later decides that this law is unconstitutional or violates the Federal Voting Rights Act, there's no way to undo that election and get people their right to vote back after they've already lost it.
Now, is there a cause for this, a cause of alarm? Is there voting violations in that state, corruption, voting cheating of some kind, vote stealing, whatever, ballot box packing, any significant example of why they have to move so quickly to implement this law?
No, there's absolutely no evidence of any systematic problem of voter fraud in North Carolina. And there's certainly no problem of voter fraud that cutting a week of early voting would address, that preventing students from registering to vote would address, that ending same-day registration would address. So there's no serious problem in North Carolina, and these proposals that they have no rational relationship to any hypothetical problem.
So if somebody goes to school at Greensboro or Charlotte or Chapel Hill or in Durham, at NC Central University there, or one of those schools, they wouldn't be able to vote when they go to school. They have to get in a car or truck and head somewhere home to get back to vote, right? That's the idea of this, to screw them.
Well, they're making it harder for people to vote where they go to school. Now, the law is very clear that you can register to vote and cast a ballot at the place where you live while you're in school. North Carolina tried to make that harder, and some local boards of election tried to make that harder, to no avail earlier this year, and we don't expect them to be able to implement those kinds of changes successfully.
Senator Turner, they just moved on a dime when it meant the Supreme Court ruled.
Well, the thing is, Chris, it's not just those states that you highlighted. I like to say that voter suppression in the South, or the South is not like Las Vegas when it comes to voter suppression. What happens there doesn't stay there. So when you see proof of citizenship laws that force people to show a copy of their birth certificate when they register to vote in Georgia and Alabama, those laws spread to Kansas and other states outside of the South. I don't know about you, but I don't carry a birth certificate around with me when I'm walking down the street. So these laws are really aimed at preventing voter registration drives. I think there's unfortunately a segment of the of our elected officials who've decided that as the electorate gets more diverse and gets younger, instead of deciding to try to compete for those votes, which is what you're supposed to do in a democracy, they're trying to squash those emerging voices in our electorate. And we don't think that's the best practice for our democracy.
You are two great guests on the show. I'm glad you both made it tonight. I'm glad we're on top of this story. And I promise you, Senator and Dale, we're going to stay on top of it. Thank you so much for coming on. Dale Ho, and of course, Senator Nina Turner of Cleveland. Up next, the latest on the Fox News Santa Claus controversy, courtesy of Jay Leno. And this is Hardball, the place for politics.